Christian parenting.
Welcome to the Christian Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Steph Thurling. I'm the Executive Director of Christian Parenting, a mom of 3, and I am so glad that you're here. This is a place where you can bring your real self, no matter what that looks like today, and be given the space, resources, and encouragement you need to set aside perfection and grow into the perfectly imperfect parent God made you to be. I'm sure that many of you are in the same season of parenting that I am, and that is busy. Every season of parenting is busy in its own way, and it's just amazing how it changes and changes so fast. My guest today, Dina Deleasa-Gonsar, totally gets it and is here to talk about it. Dina is the creator, writer, speaker, and television personality behind the popular food blog dishitgirl.com. And Dina is known for sharing her family traditions and modern twists on recipes, along with an inside look at her real life as a mom and a wife. Today, Dina and I talk about the overwhelm of parenting, managing activities and setting boundaries, and how social media adds to the pressure of doing it all and doing it all perfectly. Dina reminds us that reprioritizing so you don't burn out from the busy is good, but sometimes you have to take inventory of what you and your family is doing. I love what she shares about making sure that we prioritize faith, church, and Jesus, just like we prioritize activities, because God is faithful in the busy, and when our kids are grown up and the activities end, Jesus will stay. I know that you're going to love Dina. I hope that you enjoy what she has to share. Hey, Dina, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today, Steph.
Yeah, this is great. I'm really excited to have you here. We're going to talk about a lot of things today. I think we're going to cover a lot, but I want people first to kind of get to know you a little bit. So can you tell us about yourself, what you're working on right now? Tell us about your family, and then can you describe your family in one word?
One word. That's probably like the hardest
or a phrase.
question you said.
It's supposed to be.
I'm here in New Jersey, and I have a big but small family in a sense. It's my husband and Sienna, who's my daughter. She's 6 years old, little first grader here. But then I have, I'm one of 4, and basically everyone lives in the area. My parents, my sister, my nieces, my brother, my other sister. So, we're never short on things to do, people to see, and people up in our business, for sure. So, you can always catch me with someone from there for sure. Our Sundays are busy, always Sunday dinners, which we love, and that's kind of the catalyst or the inspiration behind how I started Dish It Girl, and I just had a heart for family dinner time and just family time in general. And it was just kind of like a little still quiet voice in my heart. And God has used it to open up doors I didn't expect in a really big way, especially with writing a cookbook / devotional now. I just couldn't leave it alone at one thing. I'm known a lot for cooking across social media, and I'm always thinking about food. I'm thinking about what's for dinner, like probably in my sleep. I feel like it just never stops, but I felt like I couldn't just write a straight cookbook. I wanted it to come with some encouragement for other parents, other families, or even people who aren't in a family unit now. Just encourage them to seek community and seek connection. And food's a great way of doing it. So I didn't want the book to land in someone's hands and it just be an aspirational book where they felt like they were falling short at home or in the kitchen. I wanted to also grab hold of that person and say, hey, you may not look like Pinterest. It may not look like your favorite social media account, but it doesn't mean what you're doing isn't worth anything. It doesn't mean that the work God put before you in your home, even though it may feel mundane and routine, I wanted to encourage them in that routine. And that's where it's at. And that's where you build the foundation for your family. And it's super worth it. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm thinking that one word or phrase to describe my family. I'm trying not to describe it as chaotic. I think that's what it is. But if I could use 2 words, I could say it's a happy chaos.
I love that. Because I think sometimes a lot of us would describe our family as chaotic, but at the same time, like, I don't know. Like, I think chaos isn't necessarily the best word because you're like, that's so out of control and so negative. But you're like, it's not negative. It's just busy. So happy chaos, I think, describes probably a lot of families well.
I love that.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And I love everything that you do with your recipes. I love cooking, but I am just like, and I'm a meal planner. So I have stuff planned out, but it's still, all of a sudden it gets to be time to make dinner. And I'm like, oh, shoot, I should have started this half an hour ago.
And that's like that's super realistic. And I say, even for myself, yes, I'm a meal planner because it helps with budget. And also that's birthed out of being so busy that I had no choice but to meal plan, because I was going from interning at an elementary school during the day, bouncing to my master's classes at night. I had no time to get home at like 5:30 and say like, oh no, what are we going to do? Or like run to the store. But then as I had Sienna, I learned that meal planning for 5 days a week actually does not work. I just make sure I have 3 solid meals for the week, which allows for use of leftovers. Or if, like, for example, tonight I had plans of pre-making meatballs for tonight. I can already tell it's like almost 12:30 and I'm like, that's not happening. I'm going to make sure I leave early to pick her up from school, get Chick-fil-A. And I'm not like as upset as I used to be about it, because I've learned a lot about giving myself grace, and because those meatballs can actually be made on Thursday. We're fine. So that's my newer philosophy on meal planning.
I feel like 3 meals a week instead of 5 is like my big takeaway from this podcast.
Good. I'm glad.
We haven't even started yet, but I'm like, that is, as you're saying that, I'm like, why am I trying so hard to make so many meals? And I probably don't need to.
For sure. For sure. I mean, giving yourself that little flexibility again to do leftovers, or to be like, you know what, it's takeout night and you're not like trashing an expensive piece of meat or an expensive ingredient that you bought. You know, the flexibility also helps budget wise and spirit wise.
Totally. Okay. Besides that, which I feel like was very helpful and practical, I also have to know, besides that tidbit, what is the one thing that you want every parent to know?
I just think that there's marvelous in the mundane, and to really be in tune with accepting the season that you're in instead of striving for another one at all times. I feel like so many times when I was going through the deeper stages of postpartum depression with Sienna, a lot of it was in part to the fact that I was so restless in the waiting period, or so restless and feeling like the world was moving on without me, instead of accepting like, this is just a small period of time where God is asking me to be happy in the home and pay attention to taking care of myself and my family. And that's okay. That's okay if I'm not hustling at all times.
Yeah. I feel like that's a really hard lesson for all moms to learn, right? Is just to be in the season that we're in, when sometimes they're hard seasons.
Yes, for sure.
One of the things that you've been sharing about on social media that I think also a lot of moms relate to is kind of this idea of just overwhelm and busyness and burnout. And I know you've been kind of talking with your audience on social media a lot about this. Like, what are some of the things that you're hearing other parents say about this?
Well, first of all, is like, I'm not the only person that feels that way, for sure. And I've talked about it a couple of times here and there before over the years, but sometimes I'm hesitant to put it out there because I don't want to confuse being overwhelmed with being ungrateful. I am very grateful that I have a full, busy life, lots of family that I'm connected with, friends and different, a great church family to be involved with. So it's not that I'm ungrateful for the opportunities and the people I have in my life. So I'm always very careful to put that out there first. However, something along the way in how I'm choosing to steward those relationships, and the time that I put into everything, something must be going awry, I guess you could say. But this particular year, Sienna's in first grade, and I just happened to notice, or I'm noticing more, just the amount of busyness that we put upon ourselves. And I could see it's like a fine line when you're standing there talking to other parents and they're like, we have, 2 football games this weekend, another cheerleading game, and then I have this, and then I have that. And you're getting bombarded by the emails from the start of school, and you're running everywhere, and you're trying to volunteer for everything. You're trying to make sure your kid's in every extracurricular activity. And I was getting overwhelmed right off the bat, not because I'm not excited that Sienna's involved in cheerleading and she's involved in soccer, but then when you get an email about like, oh, Girl Scouts too, I was just like, wait a second. It just kind of dawned on me that as I was listening to other parents complain or express overwhelm about their weekend plans, I couldn't help but thinking to myself, and not necessarily in a judgmental way, like I'm checking myself too. I'm like, well, we are signing up for all of this. And we are saying yes to everything. And sometimes I'm wondering why. Is it because we're afraid that we're going to miss out in the sense of my kid's not going to have friends, or they're not going to be as popular, or if I don't say yes to every volunteer email I get, then we're going to be shunned. Like, we're doing things out of that spirit. And pretty soon, I don't know, I feel like I'm just going from one thing to the next, hoping to make it through instead of enjoying where I'm at in the moment, if that makes any kind of sense.
Yeah, I think it makes perfect sense. And I think that this is something that I have been thinking about a lot for my own family. And it is something also that I notice. Like, we all sit around at these activities and talk about how busy we are. And sometimes it almost becomes a badge of honor, to be like, we're doing all this stuff. And then sometimes it's like, we're really busy and this is good because it's just for a season, and then we're going to be less busy, and that's fine. Sometimes it's just like, I'm about to have a breakdown because I can't handle, there's so many different spectrums, and I think we all go through all of them. And for me, I've just been thinking, like, how am I going to reprioritize things so that I don't burn out in the busy?
And I think that's a good point. I think so often we strive for balance. We're always like, how do you balance it all? How do you do it all? And I think that maybe it's more about taking consistent inventory of what we're doing and not trying to find a way to balance it all. Instead of trying to hold everything and do all of it, it's like, where do we need to actually let some things go? And it's different for everybody. What works for me and what I'm called to do within my family space and my personal space is not going to look the same for someone else. So before people get offended, because that happens easily, you get that working parent versus non-working parent, which I really think every parent's a working parent. So I don't even like those terms. But, before people feel judged for the choices they're making, I'm saying, look, you've got to pray about that. And you've got to pray about your boundaries and your capacity. And your capacity may be different than mine, or your child's capacity may be different. And that's something that I think is important for us to always be taking inventory of, instead of just trying to balance so we make it to everything. Because we may be physically making it, but that doesn't mean that we're fully present or we're doing it to anything to the best of our ability. And that's also teaching our kids about boundaries a little bit. Because right now, Sienna, I'm very fortunate. Like, I love that she's talented. I love that she wants to do everything, that she has like a go-getter spirit. But it's like she has me with whiplash sometimes. She wants to do everything in class. She wants to do soccer. She wants to do tennis. She hears someone's bird watching. She wants to go bird watch. And it's like, I could run and sign her up for all of these things, but at a certain point, I have to say no for our sanity and even for hers. I think it's important that they realize that family time and time at home is just as important as your time outside of the home. And we have to be careful that we're not forgetting that.
Yeah. How do you feel like you take an inventory of that? How do you feel like you know when to say no? Like, bird watching sounds fun, Sienna, but we don't have time for that. Which bird watching sounds really fun. That's adorable that she wants to do that.
And I mean, really, like, she just hears somebody like doing something.
Yeah, that's
she's
so
like,
cute.
I want to do it. And I do. I love that. But, I also, my parents were the other extreme. My mother was the other extreme where, as I feel like I want her to be involved, hard work, dedication, and all of that, being part of a team. I think that's important. My mom was the opposite end of the spectrum, where even though I was involved in things, like, she's always like, well, why do you need to run to that? Or you don't really need to do that. You're too tired. You don't need to get up and go. And, so she's a little bit, there's like polar opposites of things. I'm trying to find my place in the middle of that, because I think the reason why we still get together for Sunday dinner, all of us, no matter where we are and how busy we are, we really do try to still get together as much as we can, is because my parents set that boundary and they made that important. They said no sports on Sunday, and that's hard. That's hard, and I can see that's going to be hard with Sienna. But I also need to make sure that I'm running her to church the same way I'm running her to the field. Because in the long run, when she's sitting in her college dorm room and she doesn't have me there, she's going to have Jesus. And if I haven't worked hard to build her relationship with him, in those moments where I can't be there with her, he can. And if I want her to have that reflex to turn to him, not just the soccer field or the cheerleading, group that she's with. So I think when I find that we're all sort of tired and irritated and nobody's enjoying what they're doing or looking forward to it anymore, then I have to stop and say, well, why aren't we enjoying it? And why aren't we looking forward to it? Has it become something that we've lost the joy in? And that just means we've grown beyond that. Like, does she know more? She doesn't want to play soccer anymore. So why am I dragging her to the practice? For me or for her? She's not going to get a scholarship, I guess. So I should really let it go. Or is it really interfering with our ability to be at church on the days and the times that we want to be there? Is it really making it hard for us to make it to any family functions at all? So, those are the things I have to take a real look at. Because sometimes I see the kids are tired, but they're still being dragged into the car and shuttled everywhere, and everybody's miserable. So I'm just kind of like, why are we doing it? That's when I stop and say, why am I doing it?
Yeah. Well, there's so much pressure that we put on ourselves.
For sure.
We see so much. We see so much more than our parents saw. Our parents didn't get to see everything all their friends were doing.
Exactly. And I think sometimes we get stuck in between what we can do, what we think we should do, and what God's actually asking us to do. I mean, we're presented with so many options, so many models of how to get things done and how to balance things or how to achieve everything that, my mom didn't know what everyone else's mother was doing or what everyone else's home looked like inside. We have a 24/7 a glossy magazine in front of us, always highlighting I'm so tired, but we're doing it with a smile and I'm still glowing, and that can really get to you. That can really discourage you and put you in a mode of striving instead of thriving, for sure.
As a working mom, 2 of my goals for the new year are to take better care of myself and simplify. And one of the ways I'm doing that is with HelloFresh. There's a reason HelloFresh is America's #1 meal kit. They make it so simple. All I have to do is pick my meals and my delivery date, and all of the pre-portioned ingredients and step-by-step instructions come right to my door. That means less hassle, less wasted food, And they have health forward options like over 30 calorie smart and protein smart recipes each week. The recipe cards are easy to follow and they're full of pictures, so it makes cooking with my kids really fun too. And we all know that when they are involved in the cooking, they're more likely to eat it, so everyone wins. We have a great deal for you right now because I know that mornings can be crazy as a parent. I often find myself forgetting breakfast or grabbing something really fast. But you can go to hellofresh.com/CPPodcastFree and use the code CPPodcastFree for free breakfast for life. That's one breakfast item per box while the subscription is active. That's free breakfast for life at hellofresh.com/CPPodcastFree with the code CPPodcastFree. How do you feel like, so you have set a boundary around, for your family, you have set a boundary around Sundays. So you have your Sunday dinners, you have your Sunday where you go to church. How do you feel like that? How do you incorporate your faith with Sienna so that she really knows, like when she's in her college dorm room, like this is what's going to last for you is your faith?
Well, I think that's going to look different at each stage. Right now she's younger and she might not notice she's missing out on the Sunday game or whatnot quite yet. But before that even happens, I remember when she was an infant, like she was maybe that like 5-6 month old range. I was still getting up. I was taking her to church. And sometimes I would question myself and I'm like, why? Like, I don't have to be doing this right now. It would be acceptable if, people would say, oh, she's in that season where she, still waking up in the middle of the night. She can't get out of the house. Like that would have been all well and good. Or I could say to myself, she doesn't even know where we are right now. But I feel like my parents' obedience in taking us to church every single Sunday, not out of like a legalistic standpoint, but just as like building that foundation of a habit. Therefore, when I missed church, I felt like something was off. I felt like something wasn't right. It's not a condemnation thing, but rather maybe a built-in conviction that I then grew to see the value.
Yeah.
So just being faithful in going every Sunday, even when it's not easy. Look, when she was like 2.5 and she was just crawling all over the place, throwing snacks everywhere, like, yeah, for sure. I'm like, I am so stressed out and I can't even hear what they're saying. What is this for? What is this for? But I was just always very encouraged that, it's going to make a difference. And it's going to start, you have to start that foundation. And that's your job as a parent, I feel like, is to set that habit, just like setting a boundary. You have to set a habit.
Yeah. Boundaries and habits. I feel like that's like the key to parenting, right? Like little baby steps.
They're not easy. They take intentional work. That's the thing. I think we sometimes are under an impression that, if it doesn't come easy, then we shouldn't do it. And if it's not good for me, and if it's not making me feel like the emotion of happiness at the moment, it's not worth it. And I don't know if that's necessarily true in every single situation. I think it's, especially when you're going against the norm of society. Like I don't have a lot of friends who are doing that. And she might not either, as we get later on in life, that are not going to the game that's during church time. Like that, I know that challenge is up ahead, but I'm already in prayer about that for sure. Yeah. And I can't say that won't change slightly. I can't put a never or forever on anything, because I also know that God, you have a process, a journey that you're going on with your family. So let him set the boundaries. So I don't want to get ahead of myself in that either.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think that's a good reminder to always be prayerful about your family and what you're choosing to do and to participate in, what you're prioritizing, and to go back and take an inventory. And it's not a one and done inventory. It's a process.
For sure.
Continual.
And like you said before, there'll always be busy seasons. Like, I'm not saying we can avoid being busy and we can just live this like even keel, calm water life. No, if anything, there are some times where like the holiday season, I don't care what you do. it gets busy no matter what. Even if you say no to some things, it's still going to feel busy. And now I've learned the first few weeks of September are crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Yes.
So now I more prepare my mind and heart for it. And I go into it more with, like I said, like it's going to be a happy chaos instead of trying to spend energy resisting it. But however, on the other side of the coin, when it's a quiet season, I need to learn to accept that too.
That's good. Because sometimes those are just as hard to accept.
For sure.
Right? Like, especially in our world where we, again, kind of, it's almost like a contest to see who
Yeah.
can be busy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like if you're headed to a point where, I'll be honest, where I'm at right now, like you saw on Instagram, I said, hey, like so overwhelmed. Things are getting so crazy. If you see that you're headed towards a place like I am at the moment, where I'm like, wow, the only quiet or calm I could see is when I'm going to be on the operating table. That's when I'm like, that's bad. I'm like, that's not good. And that's where I need to stop and take inventory, because that's going to have me frustrated and angry, like I have been for a little bit. So when I notice that in my spirit, like I'm always struggling with being angry, frustrated, and I'm ready to blow at any moment, I think it's part of my responsibility as a mom, as a wife, to try to temper that. It's easier said than done sometimes, yes, but it is possible.
Yeah. And I feel like we all have those triggers or those kind of like warning signs in our head where we're like, oh, I am very near burnout. And like feeling the way you're feeling right now, we're like, my rest is going to be the hospital.
Yes.
That's a bad place to be.
That is a bad place to be. And, if you can admit those things to yourself, I think the better off you'll be. It's like, yeah, I've been making mistakes. I've made a mistake. But God, try to help me find the window to correct that mistake.
Let's talk about where you're at right now, because you have a lot going on. Like you are in this crazy busy season with overwhelm. Like,
yeah, for sure.
And so let's talk about that. And then like, how is God being faithful through that? And what are you learning about God and his character from this?
So I think that, I had some unexpected things pop up, when I said yes to the book, when I said yes to the conferences, when I said yes to other little various jobs and commitments that I have in my life. At the time, it seemed like everything was spread out enough. It was going to be feasible. I can do that, but I do have a bad habit of always overextending my yes, and I do feel like God has been trying to teach me for years, So I'm a very imperfect person. I'm not like preaching perfection here or from a place of perfection, but rather from a place of still learning, and just I have a heart to learn, and I want him to correct me, and I want to do better here. I also didn't know, while I was saying yes to all of these things, that I was going to be diagnosed with thyroid cancer, which changes things. It meant more doctor's appointments. It meant what is now turned into multiple surgeries, which means you have weeks where you're not able to run the race as fast as you were the week before. So it really changed a lot of things, and it has caused me to take an even harder and deeper look at my yes and my time. And I do plan on, once this season has slowed down a little bit because of the surgery I have at the end of October, I do not want to put myself in the same situation moving forward. Although I see that I've already said yes to conferences in the new year and all that. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm already doing it again. But I'm like, God, I promise I'm going to work on this with you. And, God also gives you strength to do the things he's called you to do. And when he's called you to do something, nothing can stand in its way. And I do rest in that. I do rest in that promise that when he, I don't like the phrase of when he brings you to it, he'll bring you through it. Like sometimes phrases like that really can bother you when you're going through something. However, I am amazed at the days that sometimes I'll wake up and physically I'll feel like, God, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do the task you put in front of me. And he'll ask me, well, are you going to do the tasks I put in front of you? Or are you going to try to do everything that you're putting in front of yourself? And that's instantly how I will approach my day. And instead of getting upset with myself that I either haven't hit every goal or checked everything off my list, I try to feel better about like, this can be pushed to the next day. I'm not a failure because this didn't get done today, because look at what God did through me instead of focusing on what didn't get done. And in the days and in the times where I look and I'm saying, oh my gosh, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to happen. By the end of that day, I'm always beyond grateful and beyond encouraged, because I turn around and I look at that and I say, wow, God, like we did this. Like you pushed me through this. You gave me strength that I really, truly didn't feel that I had. And, that happens each and every day almost at this point. So I'm really thankful for that. Even though it's a hard season, I'm thankful for they don't go to waste. He's, if you hang on to him and you just like reach for the hem of his garment there, he's gonna see that faithfulness and he's gonna honor that.
Okay, so as someone who's literally in a hard season and like coming from a I feel you, me too perspective instead of a like I'm an expert in this perspective. Yeah. What encouragement do you have like for the parents right now who are listening who are like, girl, me too. I can't do everything.
Well, God hasn't asked us to do everything. I think that's what I constantly try to remind myself and others. I think I've written a couple of times about the case for not doing it all. I've had God ask me many times, like, who asked you to do all of it? It's like, I didn't ask you to do it all. And furthermore, I just wrote about this morning, actually. In Exodus, Moses, we go through the story of how he led the Israelites out of the wilderness into the promised land. He parted the sea, all of that stuff. He's a great biblical hero. But in Exodus 3 and 4, he actually argues with God and says, God, I can't do this. I can't do what you've called me to do. I'm not a good speaker. I'm going to go to Pharaoh and he's going to throw me out. I'm paraphrasing like big time here.
That's good.
Sorry. So don't quote me. It's not a Bible quote.
No, it's perfect.
And he's like, I can't do any of this. Like, I'm not good enough. I'm not talented enough. I don't know how to do these things you're asking me to do. And he basically says, like, it doesn't matter. Like, I am the great I am. I am who I say I am. And it's just, we don't need to be the great I am. Because he is. And whatever it is he has placed before us in the season, whether we think it's big or small, if we are relentless about relying on him and letting him be the great I am, then he's never not going to deliver on that. He never does. He's never going to leave you in the middle of the valley with no hand to hold. But we have to be relentless and intentional in reaching for that hand. That I think is the key. And no matter what, even though I am not perfect. I am not like, the shining example of all things like faith and this and that. But I will say in every valley I've been in, even though I can't understand how or why, or I'm upset, angry, frustrated, depressed, I've always still been relentless in reaching out my hand and saying, you begin where I end. So that's kind of, and that's where I'm at in it some days here. It's like, you're going to have to begin where I end.
That's really good, Dina. That's really good.
I mean, I hope it encourages anybody's heart. Sometimes he puts us through different situations, and they are refining situations or pruning situations. Like he's never going to waste the trial, for sure.
That is very true. Okay, to end our time. since we all are busy and since cooking is your thing and you are the meal planner, can you, and we can put this in the show notes. So can you give us a weeknight recipe when we have all the things?
Okay. My favorite weeknight recipes are baked pastas. I know you should be like, Italian American girl. Of course, we could have guessed that. But you know what? I love that they do double, triple duty. Something you can make in the morning and pop in the oven later in the day. Or it's something that you can pop in the freezer for that super busy day you're having in like a week or so.
Totally.
So baked pastas and lasagnas, they're awesome. They're also great for a crowd. So not only do they work on weekdays, but weekends if you're having friends or family over and you don't have to slave away in front of the stove. It's already ready. Again, you're just putting them in the oven. So baked pastas are my favorite. And I also love a good halfway homemade jam. Get yourself a rotisserie chicken.
I love me a rotisserie chicken.
Yeah, and you can make some enchiladas with that rotisserie chicken. You can make stuffed shells with that rotisserie chicken. And I have those recipes coming in my book. So,
oh, great.
I am a big fan of the rotisserie chicken.
Rotisserie chicken is
lifesaver.
It really is. Okay, so between a rotisserie chicken and a baked pasta, we are good to go. We can have our 3 recipes.
For sure.
Okay, we'll link some things or put some things in show notes.
Yeah,
too.
of course.
Okay, and then can you tell everyone where they can find you, where they can get all of your good stuff?
Sure. Well, you can follow me on Instagram at DishItGirl, Dina, and that's where you'll see a lot of my recipes pop up and also some of my quicker devotionals. I'll put up some scriptures from time to time just to encourage you in between the cooking. And then I have a website, which is www.dishitgirl.com, where you can view a lot of my recipes.
Perfect. I'll link all that too. So
great.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being on, Dina. You're such an encouragement. I just love when you partner with Christian Parenting. So thank you for always supporting us and for joining me today.
Of course. I'm happy to be part of the Christian Parenting family.
I hope that you enjoyed this time with Dina. I have links to find her in the show notes, and I also have links to some of her recipes. There's some baked pastas and our personal family favorite, it's apple cider chicken sandwiches. I'm telling you that 2/3 of my kids are extremely picky eaters, like real picky, and they love this meal. So you should definitely try it out. Thank you for listening today and during all of 2023. I am so excited for 2024 and what is in store for Christian Parenting and this podcast. So thank you for letting me be part of your week. It is truly such a gift to me. May God bless you as you enter into this new year. May you and your family grow closer and closer to Jesus every day this year, and may 2024 be a year of abundance, grace, peace, and joy in your homes and in your lives. Thank you so much for listening to the Christian Parenting Podcast. If you haven't subscribed, you can do that now, and that way you won't miss an episode. You can connect with us on Instagram at ChristianParenting_org and see more resources at ChristianParenting.org. And if you're a mom raising daughters, we have the perfect course for you. Visit cpguides.org to learn more about our Helping Moms Raise Confident Daughters online courses. And lastly, if you have enjoyed this podcast or other Christian parenting resources, please consider donating to this ministry. Visit ChristianParenting.org and click the donate button. Christian Parenting is 100% donor funded, and none of this would be possible without your help. We are so grateful for you. You're amazing. God bless you.